Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're going on a totally fascinating step-by-step anatomical tour of the female reproductive system. We'll be traveling straight from the outside in, exploring the precise structures and incredible biological processes that make fertility, menstruation, and reproduction possible. Let's get into it. All right, let's jump right in and bust a massive misconception right off the bat. You know how in casual conversation, people just kind of throw around the word vagina for, well, everything down there? Yeah, anatomically speaking, they're actually talking about two completely different, distinct parts of the reproductive system. So the vulva refers strictly to the external organs. Think of it as your body's frontline defense system. It's a whole collection of structures that protect the super delicate internal organs from infection. The vagina, on the flip side, is an entirely internal structure. Getting this basic distinction down is really step one to truly understanding how the whole system operates. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, the external organs, 2, the vagina and cervix, 3, the uterus and fallopian tubes, and 4, the ovaries and the cycle. Starting out with section 1, the external organs. Basically our protective outer layer. Okay, so the vulva is made up of a few key components. You've got the mons venus up top, protecting the pubic bone, and then the labia majora and minora, which act as these protective outer and inner skin folds. Right at the top of those inner folds sits the clitoris, which is this highly sensitive erectile tissue. It's actually biologically homologous to the male penis. Just below that is the urethral opening for urine, and then the vaginal opening, which might be partially covered by a thin membrane called the hymen. Oh, and we definitely can't forget the Bartholin's and Skene's glands. They're perfectly placed right there to secrete fluids and keep everything nicely lubricated. Moving right along to section 2, the vagina and cervix, exploring those internal passageways. Traveling further up, we hit the vagina itself. It's this 8 to 12 centimeter fibromuscular tube connecting the outside of the body to the lower part of the uterus. And honestly, one of the most mind-blowing things about the vaginal canal is its elasticity. It has these folded mucosal walls, which means it can literally stretch out enough to accommodate a baby during childbirth and then seamlessly shrink right back down to securely hold something as small as a tampon. It's just wild. Now, zooming in a bit, we get to the cervix. Sitting right at the very top of the vaginal canal, you've got this cylindrical structure acting as the ultimate biological gateway to the uterus. And if you look right in the middle there, you'll spot this tiny slit-like opening that is called the external os. This little opening is absolutely crucial because it's what lets menstrual blood exit and sperm enter. So here's a super reassuring takeaway for everyday life. That cervical opening, it is tiny. Because the cervix acts as this incredibly firm physical barrier right at the top of the canal, there's absolutely no way a tampon can ever slip past it and get lost inside your body. I know it's a common fear, but your anatomy is literally built from the ground up to prevent that from ever happening. Making our way up to section 3, the uterus and fallopian tubes, the pelvic core. So perfectly centered right between the ovaries and nicely nestled between the bladder and the rectum is the uterus. It's this hollow, pear-shaped organ, usually about 6 to 9 centimeters long when not pregnant. It has a super thick, muscular outer wall known as the myometrium and an inner lining called the endometrium, which we'll definitely get into more in a sec. And of course, flanking it on either side, you've got the 2 oval-shaped ovaries. Now watch how this all connects into one massive, brilliantly designed system. Reaching outward from the upper corners of the uterus are the fallopian tubes. These are these narrow 10 to 14 centimeter muscular highways. Notice how the ends of the tubes flare out into these little finger-like projections? Those are called fimbriae. They don't actually physically attach directly to the ovaries. Instead, they just sort of gently hover and embrace them, totally ready to sweep up an egg the exact moment it drops. Honestly, you can think of this whole setup as the ultimate biological production line. The ovaries are the factories producing and maturing the eggs. The fallopian tubes are the transport highways, which, by the way, is exactly where fertilization usually takes place. And the uterus, that's the incubation chamber, perfectly designed to provide a secure, nutrient-packed environment for a fetus to grow. Which brings us to our final stop, section 4, the ovaries and the cycle. Let's talk about those production factories. Okay, get ready because this number is going to blow your mind. 6 million. That is the total number of eggs a female fetus has while she's still in early fetal development. That represents the absolute peak of her lifetime supply, completely predetermined before she even takes her very first breath out in the world. Insane, right? Now, looking at this timeline really highlights a massive difference between male and female biology. Unlike guys, who basically produce sperm continuously throughout their entire lives, a woman's egg count drops dramatically. From that peak of 6 million at 20 weeks gestation, it drops down to about 1 million right at birth. And by the time a girl hits puberty, around age 12, which is when the cycle actually kicks into gear, only about 300,000 eggs are left. So those remaining eggs get used in this continuous, monthly rhythmic loop, all driven by hormones. First up is phase 1, the follicular phase. Hormones like FSH tell a bunch of follicles in the ovary to start growing, though usually only one dominant egg makes it to full maturity. Then phase 2, the ovulatory phase. You get this sudden surge in luteinizing hormone, or LH, which causes the ovary to literally burst open a follicle and release the egg. Boom. Finally, phase 3, the luteal phase. That empty follicle turns into something called the corpus luteum, pumping out progesterone to thicken up the uterine lining. But if that egg doesn't get fertilized, that lining breaks down, sheds, and yep, menstruation begins. And here's a super practical way this connects to everyday life. You can actually observe these internal hormonal shifts happening in real time. Right before you ovulate, rising estrogen makes the mucus produced by your cervix drastically change. It goes from being kind of thick and sticky to this highly slippery, almost egg-white texture. And that is definitely not by accident. It's specifically engineered to capture sperm, nourish them, and help them zip right up that internal highway toward the newly released egg. Talk about a customized transit system. So when we zoom out and look at this entire journey, from the protective external vulva, up that expanding vaginal canal, past the tightly secured cervical gateway, straight into the muscular incubation chamber of the uterus, and finally to the microscopic release of an incredibly finite supply of eggs, it really leaves us with a powerful perspective. The female reproductive system is an absolute masterclass in biological engineering. So the real question is, how does grasping all this interconnected complexity change the way you respect, care for, and understand your own body? Definitely something to chew on as you go about your day.
Thank you for listening to this explainer video brought to you by Akruti IVF and Women's Hospital, Dombivli, Mumbai, India.